Hey guys, my name is Derek and I serve here at Bethel Assembly as the youth director. And I am joined here with the current youth pastor / executive pastor, Pastor Danny.
Hey guys.
Hey, so Pastor Danny, I just wanted to kind of open this up with just answering this one simple question. Do I really need a mentor?
Yes.
Do I really need a mentor? So throughout this session, we're going to be answering this question, figuring out certain ways to figure out if I need a question, if you need a mentor, if you need a mentor. To fully answer this, I'm going to give you guys these 3 quick points, all right? I want you guys to remember this: realization, submission, and covering. Realization, submission, and covering. So for the first one, realization. One of the first steps in maturing as a believer and even as leaders is realizing that we all need a mentor.
Yeah.
And the reason why we need to realize this is because we are new. We haven't gone through this whole life. There's going to be seasons, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be situations that we have never walked through. And if we believe that we hold every single answer, well then we're not going to grow and we're not going to be able to lead in the best way that God wants us to lead.
Correct.
So I want to give you guys a couple of examples throughout the Bible. So throughout the Bible, we see that there's leaders upon leaders who have helped shape other leaders. There are leaders who have gone through mentorships, right?
Yeah.
So one of the first examples is Joshua and Moses. We see that in towards the end of Exodus. We see that in the beginning of Numbers, right? So basically what happens here is God chooses Joshua, and Joshua had never led a nation before. He had never led a people before. He has never spoken in front of people before. He has never led other people spiritually, physically, emotionally, right? But God still chose him. Why? Because God believed in him. And so God isn't just going to let us hang dry or let us go throughout this calling, go throughout our life alone. He wants to put people in our lives to help us grow. And this is exactly what he did in Exodus and in Numbers. He put Moses in Joshua's life.
Yeah.
Moses led Joshua as a leader who has been leading the nation. He led the people out of Egypt, out of slavery, and he's leading them to the promised land, right? And God is saying, Moses, it's your time is coming, and you need to appoint a leader. And so he appoints Joshua, right?
Absolutely.
And Moses is like, okay, I'm going to take up this mantle. I'm going to mentor Joshua. The second one is, we find it in the New Testament, right? Timothy. It's one of the most famous, probably, mentorships all across the world. is Paul, the Apostle Paul, and Timothy. Timothy was called, but he was also very young.
Yeah.
He was low in the 20s. He was super young. He was inexperienced. He had just become a Christian, and God had called him, and Paul even realized it in his life, right?
Yeah.
So Paul had Timothy stay home for 5 to 6 years just to train up on, his reading, his studying, his leadership models, his DNA of a leader.
Yeah.
And he taught him how to lead other people. He taught him how to speak in front of other people. And one of the fascinating things I actually found out a couple weeks ago about Timothy is that in the Jewish culture, right, they believed that the younger you were, the more the less intelligence you had, or like you weren't worth as someone old, as much as someone older than you, right?
Yeah.
And so naturally, I could see how Timothy was feeling timid, how he was feeling shy, because he was in this culture, he was in this society that was saying, hey man, like, you're younger, you don't have as much experience, you don't know as much as we do, so we're just going to push you to the side right now. But yet God is calling him to take up this mantle, to take up this position, and to lead the people to Jesus.
That's right.
So how does he do this? He puts Paul inside Timothy's life to train him up, to lead him, to guide him, to mentor him, and to what God is calling him to be. So Paul trained Timothy to be one of the best Christian models for the early church, right? We see that in, we're going through a Philippians book study right now. I mean, we just went through how Timothy was a great example to the Philippian church. We see in 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy and so on and so forth throughout the New Testament of how Timothy, because he was Paul's mentee,
Yep.
right? He was able to lead in the best way possible, right? And so I just wanted to point that out for us as we get going within this and just see how God has placed people in the Bible to mentor younger, newer leaders who are called to the purpose, right? So, Petey, I would just like to ask you, what's your basic level of being able to find a mentor and knowing that you need a mentor?
Yeah, at this age, I'm still being mentored.
Yeah.
Mentors come in different forms. I have mentors that are very close in proximity, and then I have mentors that I've never met. Like Paul. Paul is one of my mentors, right? I learned from his leadership. I learned from his relationship. I learned from his posture. But then I have people in my life that I speak about my life situations, my decisions. So mentorship never ends.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the question was, rephrase the question that you said, or repeat your question.
Yeah. So what's your basic level of being able to find a mentor or finding someone to mentor, knowing that you need to be mentored?
Yeah. So reliable people
Yeah.
are people that you identify as people you want to mentor.
Yeah.
Okay. People who come to your youth group, or people who are at your church, or some family member that is hungry to learn, right? Just life skills, biblical knowledge, how to, lead in certain aspects of life and situations. You see those people, and then you create a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Right? There's no mentoring that happens without relationship.
Yeah.
And so if you can't have a relationship with the person, there's no mentorship.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So step number 1 is relationship, right? Step number 2 is love. Like, you really have to pour in love before you pour in anything else.
Yeah.
And so for me, I lead with love and with relationship, and then we pray and we identify who God is calling and who God is leading, and then we spend concentrated time with them. So I think basic number 1 is relationship, and number 2 is love, or the other way around, right? Love first and then a relationship.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. And I love that, because one of the themes that this generation, that this world really needs, is just knowing that someone out there loves them.
Yeah.
And one of the other things is just like what you said, is relationship.
Yeah.
How can you have a relationship, or how can you mentor or find a mentor that doesn't want to love and doesn't want to care for you, doesn't want to spend time with you, doesn't want to build something, doesn't want to build a relationship with you, right? You need that in a mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, and I would say too, Derek, that as a mentor, the love that I give has no expectations of receiving love back. Because most of the people that I would mentor are young, and they have a lot of growing to do.
Yeah.
And so even in that, I'm not always expecting for people to get it right away. It's a process.
Yeah.
And relationships are a process.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're doing really well, and sometimes you're doing not so well. But love trumps all of that, right? You love them, you're able to see past it. So, yeah.
I love that. That's great. And that's a lot of insight on just how to love people in general and how to lead other people in general too. So the second point within this, figuring out why do I need a mentor, is submission.
Yeah.
And so I want to read this.
It's a great word.
It is a great word. I'm going to read this in First Peter chapter 5. It says, "In the same way, you who are younger, submit yourselves to your elders.
Yeah.
All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble." He shows favor to the humble.
Yeah.
And I think one of the hardest things for anyone to do, and especially young people, is to submit. I feel like we're scared of it. And I really do think that there's just, sometimes there can be a lot of pride, there can be a lot of hot-headedness. I just graduated from North Central, right?
Yeah.
In May, and I spent 4 years working on a degree there, and I spent time studying, and I spent time serving at a church up in Minnesota, and sometimes I feel like, oh, I got this. I can run the show. I got this, right? But it's realizing that there's a submission aspect that we all need to go through.
Yeah.
And we all need to submit to somebody.
Yeah.
We all need someone who can love, guide, and correct us. Mm-hmm. And if we can't find that, if we can't realize that we need that, then I think there's some serious,
Heart issues,
yeah. And we need to figure it out, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you this question.
Totally agree.
I want to ask you this question is, why do you believe that it is hard for people to submit to their mentors and or leaders?
Well, I think you answered this question. I'll elaborate, but I think you answered this question. There's many different reasons why submission is a hard thing. One is it could be no one's ever modeled it. And so people can, you learn from your parents. You learn from your family settings. You learn from your church settings. Yeah. Right? And so if it's not modeled to you, then it's really hard for you to grasp it, and it's really hard for you to emulate it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I think that's one of the reasons why. But I think ultimately you answered the question. It's pride.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the package. And we need to be able to recognize that.
Yeah.
And then submit to God's leading.
Yeah.
Submission is often looked at as a negative thing, as a well, they know more than I do, or if I submit to what they're saying or what they're doing or their systems or whatever, then it's going to be like, who am I? How do I make my mark?
Exactly.
Right, type of thing. But the problem is that this is God's kingdom.
Yep.
Right, and all the glory goes to God.
That's right.
It doesn't go to anyone else. And so for us, submission is great. Right. It's like the way up in the kingdom is down.
Yeah.
That's just the way that works.
Yeah.
And so I would say, if it's hard for you to submit, then ask the Lord to shine a light on your heart and to really reveal to you why. Because there's a reason why.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the reason could be that you just don't like who you're under.
Yeah.
And that's okay. If you absolutely hate who you're under, then you might have to find a different mentor.
Yeah.
Right?
Starts with the relationship.
Yeah, it starts with relationship and then love, right?
Yep.
So I feel like submission is a very, very hard thing, but when you do it genuinely, it's one of the most beautiful things.
Right. Yep.
And God is honored.
Yep.
Jesus had to submit to death on a cross.
Yeah.
And God honored him. Yeah. Right? He exalted him to the highest place. And so, not saying that you need to submit to death on the cross, but what I'm saying is, it's good. It's a good practice to submit to your leaders, as long as your leaders are godly, are loving, and are biblical, right?
Yeah,
biblically sound,
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, PD, and I think if I'm being honest, if I'm being transparent, like this relationship, right? Like in our meetings, I told you this before, but sometimes it's hard for me to hear the things that he's saying. So like I might have an idea for a youth night, or I might have an idea for an event, and I meet with him, I talk to him, and he's saying, "Hey, Derek, like, I don't think that this is the right direction. I don't think that maybe you haven't seen this perspective. Maybe you haven't seen this context that I have, right?"
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard on me. For me, you're not being hard on me,
Yeah.
but I'm being hard on my
to receive.
It's hard to receive because I have that pride inside of me, because I say, and to my mind, to my heart, I'm saying, man, I did this, I came up with this, I want this to happen, I want to receive the glory, right? And so
I don't think you want to receive the glory.
No.
But I think, if I can interject here for a minute.
Keep going, yeah.
Because, you know, we've had, like, we just had a 3-hour conversation this week.
Yeah.
Or last week, I think it was, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to that aspect, the aspect that Derek is talking about, where he comes to me, let's say, and he's like, "Hey, I have these ideas, I have this." One of the things that, as a mentee, you should always keep in mind is that, as Derek said, someone is older, has lived more life. As an older person, I don't want to be stuck in my glory days. And so I realize, and this is for if this could be helpful to any of the pastors who are in transition or who have been around for a long time, I'm not going to be stuck in the glory days. I realize that God has new things that he wants to do. He's going to do that through you. Right? But as a person who has been around for a little while, there's certain guidelines and there's certain convictions that we have. And those convictions are strong. They're tied to the Bible. They're tied to the methodology of church, right? Of the way we lead our congregations, the way we lead our youth groups. And when you come, for instance, or when someone, a mentee comes to a mentor and the mentor says, "Well, I don't think that's a good idea," defensiveness should never, never be it should never be the number one reaction. I want to give everyone a piece of advice, and you know this already, but whenever your mentor says, "I don't think that's a good idea," the best answer is, "Can you help me understand?"
Yeah.
Because that's where you really want to get to. Can you help me understand this? Because obviously in your heart you feel like, I worked on this.
Yeah.
Like, I thought this through.
Yeah.
I really think this is going to be like the greatest thing. And then when your mentor says, maybe not, the best thing to do is say, "Can you help me understand?" And then walk through it. And then maybe through that process, right? Because we've had these things happen between us. Through that process, your mentor's like, "Oh yeah, that's actually a good idea, but let's do it this way." Right? And you come to a happy medium. So I think don't feel shut down.
No, yes.
Don't feel defeated, right? Feel like, okay, I have this opportunity to flesh this out with my mentor.
Yeah. Yeah, ask that question of, "Hey, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing?"
Right.
What do you feel that I don't feel?
Correct.
What do you know that I don't know?
Correct.
Right? And I think, even to go another step forward, or to add another step, is before our meetings now, like I'll pray.
Yeah.
I'll pray before we meet. I'll pray before I talk to my mentor, because I'm like, "Lord, I know that there's pride in me, and I know that there's a defensive heart."
There can be pride in you.
Correct.
There can be.
It's
not always like that.
Right. So, but I pray over that in my heart, and I say, "Lord, help me. God, help me to accept what you're saying through PD, through my mentor."
Yeah.
And I want that vision, and I want that. So I pray that over my life, and that's helped me a lot. So, our last point for this is covering. Covering.
I love this.
You do love this. And I can't wait to ask you about it.
I love this. It's my favorite thing.
It is. So this is an important aspect as to why we need mentors. When you start off in life, and especially in ministry, right, you need to have a covering over your life, a covering over your ministry.
Amen.
And what do I mean by this? Is when you have a mentor, when you have a leader placed over you, there's a non-physical thing called covering. This covering protects you from any harm, any ungodly thing that may come through your life.
Yeah.
So, for example, since PD is my mentor, since PD has been my mentor, He has an authority, he has an influence over my life and over, every aspect over my life that covers and shades anything that might try to come in and attack me, right? Any attack from the enemy. And so I kind of want to ask you about this, and I want you to give your full thought about it. What do you think it means to have a covering?
What do I think it means to have a covering? Well, we just talked about submission.
Yeah.
Right? And we just talked about how if the mentee submits to the mentor, they can really do a lot of great things together. Right? I love being your covering. It's just it makes my day, because the younger that you are, the more prone you are to make mistakes, the more prone you are to not think about all the different possibilities that can happen, or even the perceptions that can be projected on you. And so for me, like for Derek and I, as his covering, for instance, Derek's engaged to a beautiful young lady named Ellie, and he will be married in June.
Let's go.
And, she spent the summer interning here at the church, and we had some real guidelines as to, hey, these are the things you can do, and these are the things you cannot do. Yeah. And a lot of people wouldn't receive that. Yeah. A lot of people are like, hey, I'm engaged. I can do whatever I want with my life. But when someone sees Derek and Ellie, at the park holding hands or sitting at the bench and talking about life or whatever it is, and they come to me like, hey, I saw this person ABC, and I already know, and I'm already informed, I can say, yeah, I know about that. What's the problem? I could be his covering. I could be your covering. I could be Ellie's covering. I can do that, even in the way you preach, right? Like you submit all of your sermons to me, right? And if there's something that needs to be adjusted, no one else sees that.
Yeah.
Right? It's happening here.
Yeah.
Why? Because I want to be your covering. I want to be there for you. I want you to succeed. And because I want you to succeed, then I'm going to be that umbrella that protects you from the elements.
Right.
And so it is massively important. Everyone should have someone that is their covering. Everyone should have someone that is their umbrella, that protects you, that looks out for you, that rebukes you, that corrects you, that admonishes you, that loves you, that is watching out for you, that that you're accountable to, that you confess to. All of those things, right? Those are all under that umbrella.
Yep.
And so when someone may perceive something incorrectly, or when someone may project something incorrectly, your covering, especially to me, as your covering, right? Like I know God is your covering and the Holy Spirit. I don't want to over spiritualize this, but I can look into the matter with the right lens and have the right answer for the time, because you have been able to submit to my covering. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And I think still this goes back to the very beginning of the relationship.
Yeah.
You are able to see that. You're able to see different sides of me. You're able to see my character because I have that relationship with you, because I spend time with you, because you spend time with me. So he knows that if anything were to happen, as in like someone comes up to him and starts talking trash or starts talking badly about me, he's able to say, no, I know Derek. He told me about this. I already have him covered. He's good. He's fine. Right? It's because of that relationship that we have as a mentor and mentee.
Yeah, and the mentee acknowledges that as a covering, it's not always going to be roses. Right. We're going to have some tough talks.
Thanks.
We're going to have some tough talks, but this all goes down to love, right? When you bring issues to the table of love, you're able to talk about it freely.
100%.
And you're able to work it out, pray through it, correct it, and move forward.
Yep, that's right.
And so relationship and love are huge. Yep. And that's really the essence of your covering.
Yeah. It's really I feel like it's the essence of all three of the points that we've gone through. Yeah. Realization, submission, and covering. And so with that being said, I just wanted to say thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this video was insightful. I hope you learned something from it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Bethel Assembly or DM us on Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram. All right, see you guys.
All right, take care, guys.